A single meeting with a stunning alien turned into something more. The discovery in the mist. The Scottish Highlands stretched endlessly before Ethan Cole, their rugged peaks disappearing into thick bands of morning mist. He adjusted his camera lens, scanning the cliffsides for any sign of the golden eagles that made these remote valleys their home. 3 weeks into his photography expedition, and he'd captured nothing but empty skies and ancient stone. The fog rolled in thicker as he climbed higher, his boots crunching on frost-kissed heather. Something felt different today, an electric charge in the air that made his skin prickle with awareness. Then he heard it, a low hum that didn't belong to wind or wildlife, followed by a distant crash that sent ravens scattering from their roosts. Ethan's instincts overrode his caution. He followed the sound through the mist, his heart hammering as the landscape opened into a hidden glen he'd never noticed before. There, carved into the earth like a wound, was a crater still smoking with otherworldly heat. Twisted metal gleamed with an iridescent sheen unlike any aircraft he recognized. And then he saw her. She lay partially concealed by the wreckage, her form unmistakably humanoid yet utterly foreign. Her skin radiated a soft turquoise glow that pulsed faintly with her breathing. Hair the color of deep indigo spilled across the scorched grass, and when her eyes fluttered open, they held depths that reminded him of nebulae he'd seen through telescopes, swirling violets and silvers that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She tried to speak, her voice melodic but strained, words in a language that danced like music. Blood, or something similar, shimmering faintly blue, seeped from a wound on her shoulder. Every rational part of Ethan's mind screamed impossibility, but his humanity wouldn't let him walk away. "I've got you," he whispered, carefully lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than expected, her body temperature cooler than his own. Those cosmic eyes fixed on his face, and something passed between them, a jolt of recognition that defied explanation. The mist swallowed them as Ethan carried her toward his cottage, unaware that this single act of compassion would alter the trajectory of his entire existence, healing through connection. Rain hammered against the cottage windows as Ethan laid Saren. She'd managed to communicate her name through soft, telepathic impressions, on his bed. His hands trembled as he gathered his first aid kit, though he had no idea if human medicine would help or harm her. She watched him with those infinite eyes, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. When he hesitated over her wound, she reached out and gently guided his hand to her shoulder. The moment their skin connected, warmth flooded through him, not physical heat, but something deeper. Emotions, he realized with shock. She was sharing what she felt, gratitude, fear, and an aching loneliness that mirrored his own. "I understand," he whispered, carefully cleaning the wound. She flinched but didn't pull away, instead maintaining that connection between them. Over the next 2 days, as floods turned the mountain roads into impassable rivers, they developed their own language. Saren's English came in fragments, learned from intercepted transmissions, but her empathic touch spoke volumes. She showed him holographic projections from a device on her wrist, images of Thyra, her homeworld, with its floating crystal gardens and cities that sparkled beneath 3 moons. "Observer," she managed in halting English, touching her chest. "I watch, learn cultures." Ship failed. Ethan found himself sharing things he'd buried since his sister's death 2 years ago. The grief that drove him into isolation, the way he'd replaced human connection with endless wilderness photography. When tears fell, Saren caught them on her fingertips, examining them with wonder before pressing her palm to his cheek. The gesture sent cascading waves of comfort through him, her people's way of healing emotional wounds. Each evening, they sat by the fireplace. She'd trace patterns on his forearm, symbols from her language, she explained, and he'd feel echoes of what she meant to convey. On the 3rd night, her fingers lingered longer on his wrist, drawing spirals that made his pulse quicken. "This means?" he asked, breathless. Her eyes glowed brighter. Connection, growing. The air between them shifted, charged with possibility neither had anticipated. The awakening of hearts. By the 5th day, Saren moved with growing strength, though she chose to stay close to Ethan. They fell into an unexpected rhythm, mornings preparing simple meals together, afternoons where he taught her about Earth's wildlife while she shared stories of Thyra's bioluminescent forests that sang at twilight. She was fascinated by music. Ethan played his sister's old vinyl records, and Saren swayed with an otherworldly grace that stole his breath. Without thinking, he offered his hand. She accepted, and they moved together in the small cottage, her body fitting against his as if choreographed by fate itself. "Your world dances with sadness," she murmured, her head resting near his shoulder. "Beautiful sadness." "Not all sadness," Ethan replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Not right now." Her face tilted up to his, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns of silver that traced her turquoise skin like constellations. His hand moved to cup her cheek, softer than he'd imagined, warm now with recovered vitality. She leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting closed. That night, the clouds finally parted, revealing a sky exploding with aurora borealis. Saren gasped, pulling him outside into the cold. "We caused this," she breathed, gesturing skyward. "My ship's energy, reacting with your atmosphere. It's like home." They stood in the garden, emerald and violet light dancing across their faces. Ethan couldn't look away from her, the way wonder transformed her features, how the auroras reflected in her cosmic eyes. "Ethan," she said softly, testing his name with growing confidence. "On Thyra, we believe souls recognize each other. Resonance, we call it. Very rare. Most never find it." His heart thundered. "And you feel that? Here?" She turned to face him fully, her hand finding his chest, resting over his racing heart. "I feel everything with you." He couldn't resist anymore. Ethan leaned down, giving her every chance to pull away, but instead, she rose to meet him. Their lips touched, tentative, exploratory, electric. She tasted like starlight and ozone and something indefinably sweet. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the aurora seemed to pulse brighter above them. "This changes everything," he whispered against her forehead. "Yes," she agreed, her arms wrapping around him. "Everything." The choice between worlds. The device on Saren's wrist began pulsing with urgent amber light 3 days later, shattering their fragile paradise. She stared at it with an expression Ethan had learned to read, conflict warring with duty. "Rescue beacon," she explained quietly. "Activated automatically when my vitals stabilized. Retrieval window opens. 2 days." Ethan's world tilted. He'd known this moment would come, had tried to prepare himself, but nothing could armor his heart against the thought of losing her. "You have to go back. My mission requires debriefing. My family waits. Thyra is." She struggled for words, then pressed her palm to his temple, flooding him with images, towering spires of living crystal, beings like her moving through gardens that floated among clouds, the profound sense of belonging to something ancient and vast. "It's beautiful," he managed, though the vision blurred with his tears. "You should go home." But that night, neither could bear the distance between them. She came to his room as moonlight streamed through the windows, her silhouette ethereal in the silver glow. No words passed between them, they transcended language days ago. When she climbed into his bed, Ethan pulled her close, memorizing every detail, the coolness of her skin warming against his, the way her hair spilled across his pillow like liquid midnight, how her luminescence brightened when his lips found the curve of her neck. "Show me," she whispered. "How humans love." He answered with tender reverence, his hands mapping the planes of her body while she gasped and trembled beneath his touch. She responded with her own explorations, her empathic abilities heightening every sensation until he couldn't tell where his feelings ended and hers began. They moved together with desperate urgency, two souls refusing to acknowledge the dawn that would tear them apart. Afterward, tangled in sheets and each other, Saren traced those spiral patterns on his chest again, the Thyran symbol for soul bond. "My people mate for life," she confessed. "When resonance happens, it's absolute. No other will ever." "Don't," Ethan interrupted, his voice breaking. "Don't make this harder." She caught his face between her hands, forcing him to meet those galaxy eyes. "You don't understand. I've already bonded. My choice was made the moment you carried me from that crater." Love's eternal decision. The Thyran vessel descended at sunset, a magnificent ship that shimmered like a soap bubble, refracting light into impossible colors. It settled in the glen where Ethan had found Saren, silent as a dream. Through the cottage window, they watched figures emerge, tall and luminous like her, gesturing toward the structure with obvious urgency. Saren stood frozen, the device on her wrist chiming insistently. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and pressed his face into her hair. "I won't ask you to stay," he said, though each word cost him. "Your world, your people, they need you. I can't be selfish enough to." "Stop." She turned in his embrace, her eyes blazing with inner light. "Listen to what you're saying. You would let me go, even though it destroys you, because you want my happiness above your own." "Of course I would." "That," she said fiercely, "is how I know you're real. That this resonance isn't some fantasy born of trauma and isolation." She pulled the device from her wrist and, before he could stop her, crushed it beneath her heel. The chiming ceased abruptly. "Saren, what are you?" "Thyrans bond once, eternally. I told you this." She cupped his face, her touch flooding him with absolute certainty. "I choose Earth. I choose you. My people will understand, resonance is sacred. They won't force me back." Ethan's knees nearly buckled. "You'd give up everything? Your family, your world, 3 moons and floating gardens and—" "I give up nothing," she interrupted. "I gain everything. You showed me that love isn't about possession or obligation. It's about seeing someone's soul and saying yes, you, always you." Her smile broke through her intensity like sunrise. "I say yes to you, Ethan Cole." Through the window, they watched the Thyran ship wait another hour before finally lifting skyward, leaving behind a scatter of luminescent petals, her people's blessing for a bonded pair choosing their own path. That night, wrapped in each other beneath the stars, Saren pointed out Thyra's distant star. "I can visit someday," she murmured. "Introduce you properly. But this," she pressed his hand over her heart, "this is home now." Ethan kissed her temple, tasting stardust and forever. They had no roadmap for a human-alien relationship, no guidebook for building a life between worlds. But they had something rarer, a love that transcended galaxies, born from one chance meeting in the mist. Together, they would write their own impossible story. Lessons from the stars. True love sees beyond the surface to the soul within, recognizing connection that transcends all boundaries. The greatest courage is not in holding on, but in being willing to let go, and the greatest gift is when someone chooses to stay. Home is not a planet or place, but wherever your heart finds its eternal resonance. Some meetings are written in starlight, chance encounters that become destiny when 2 souls say yes to the impossible.